Are you ready to perform at your highest potential? Welcome to the Performance Matters podcast from GP Strategies, your talent transformation partner. In each episode, we'll interview industry experts and explore best practices and innovative insights to help your organization improve performance.
Hello and welcome to the Performance Matters podcast. I'm your host, Michael Teal, and in today's episode, we dive deep into the evolving world of talent management and organization design. Whether you're an HR leader, business strategist, or simply passionate about unlocking human potential, today's episode offers insights to help your organization thrive in an era of constant change. Today, we are talking with longtime friend of the show, Dr. Cheryl Jackson, Director of Management and Organization Design at GP Strategies. Join us as we explore workforce trends, the skills revolution, and the role of talent management in shaping the organizations of tomorrow. Okay, so let's start with the big picture on this topic. I know there's so much happening out there. Automation, a little thing called AI, hybrid work. I mean, let's just think big picture. From your perspective, why is upskilling and reskilling becoming a central focus for organizations?
Hi, great question, Michael, and thanks so much for having me back. The skills landscape is shifting faster than ever. That is clear. It's been abundantly clear for some time now. And McKinsey tells us that 87% of companies are already feeling the pain of skill gaps. Now, when you add to that the World Economic Forum's prediction that 85 million jobs will be displaced by technology by 2030, but 97 million new roles will emerge. That is a lot of change and some really big numbers that we're talking about. And the takeaway here is that the workforce isn't shrinking, it's transforming. Companies must reskill existing employees for these new opportunities while continuously upskilling to stay competitive in this tech-driven world that is quickly coming upon us.
Okay, so I don't want to gloss over a couple of these terms here that you've mentioned. So you've said reskilling, Dr.
Mhm.
Cheryl, and I just want to level set this. From your perspective, is that the same thing as upskilling? I mean, are we talking synonyms or is there a meaningful difference between these two terms?
We do often throw terms around without defining them, so thank you for the pause. They're not exactly the same thing. Now, they both do involve learning, that's for sure, but the difference between the two lies in their focus and objectives, though both are crucial for workforce development. So, let me dive deep into each one here. Upskilling is about enhancing an employee's existing skills to improve performance in their current role or to prepare them for future opportunities within the same career path. So, the goal here is to keep employees competitive in their fields as new tools, technology, and methodologies emerge. An example here would be a marketing professional learning advanced digital analytics or mastering AI powered tools to stay ahead in a data driven industry, or say earning an advanced certification in the same domain to facilitate career growth in the same field. So that's upskilling. We're developing those skills that we already have to do really what we're already doing. Reskilling, on the other hand, is about training employees to take on entirely new roles by teaching them different skills, typically because their current roles are becoming obsolete or the organization's needs are shifting. And the goal here is to transition employees into new positions within the organization. This could help avoid layoffs and help preserve that institutional knowledge that each employee carries with them. And Michael, this is something we often overlook in discussions of whether to develop or bring in new talent with the skills that we're looking for. Gaining institutional knowledge takes time and it can be a powerful driver of success, but it must be a consideration when determining the right approach for your organization.
All right, Cheryl. So thanks for the definition about reskilling. What would be an example, though, thinking about this concept of reskilling? Shoot me something like a real world practical example of reskilling.
So, an example of reskilling would be a factory worker being trained in programming and robotics. to oversee maybe an automated production line instead of performing those manual tasks where they were on the line watching product come down the line. Now they're overseeing a robot doing that. What does that look like? They may not have had those computer skills before, but now they have to learn how to oversee the robotics and manually oversee that computer program that is overseeing the robotics. So those are examples of reskilling someone who had a different set of skills before, but now we need to give them a new set of skills.
Okay, so I can see from what you're saying, both upskilling and reskilling, they're essential in our workforce, I guess, specifically if we want to retain and empower our talent here. One thing that I'm just going to play a little devil's advocate on here is we say reskilling and we go, okay, let's check that box. We're just going to reskill people. But from what you've seen, is this easier said than done? And looking with a solution mindset here, what are some of these challenges that companies that are interested in reskilling need to maybe think about or get in front of?
Oh, for sure. We often go through saying, this is what we need to do, and then we toss it over to someone else to implement. And oftentimes that's the talent management group or the learning and development group that says, okay, these are the skills we need to develop. But others don't necessarily come on board to support it. And we don't have the leadership support to get what we need done in the organization. So reskilling requires investment, and many companies really struggle to prioritize that development amidst other potentially more urgent business pressures. So it's not just about technical training, it's about cultivating skills like critical thinking and creativity and adaptability. So it does involve somewhat of a culture shift as well to reinforce those new competencies or soft skills. Deloitte's data actually shows that while 40% of companies are investing in automation, many haven't paired those investments with really robust training programs to support that shift. They're not developing the talent infrastructure, if you will, to support the strategic direction. So we're going one way, but we don't bring our employees on board. And that creates a rift between the talent that you have and who is able to actually perform those new roles.
Okay, so then turning our eye towards talent management. So, from your perspective, how does talent management tie into this? Where do leaders start to make a real impact?
Yeah, talent management is the linchpin, right? Talent management is about recognizing that people are your greatest assets and designing systems to maximize their potential. Assuming organizational leadership has already defined the strategic direction and the goals, I would start with defining those needed skills for the future. So, what does our talent need to look like to achieve those goals that have been established for our organization? Then we really need to do a thorough skill audit. So, what does your workforce have now and what's missing for the future? Now, I'm always a huge advocate at knowing at any point in your journey, what does your current talent landscape look like? And having a good system or approach for defining that is key. And not many organizations do this well. I've been in many organizations where we just didn't know what our talent looked like. So, just a quick plug here, you can purchase an existing tool, have managers assess their talent, even conduct self assessments or use another method of evaluation. But you've got to have a solid baseline to know what does our talent look like so that we can make decisions about building that talent, bringing in new talent, upskill, reskill, whatever that looks like. You've got to have that solid baseline so that we can manage it for the future.
I like that idea that you're talking about utilizing HR technology where you can visually see a map of your organization's skills and what that landscape looks like. Now, you also mentioned one thing that I know that you are expert in, and that's organization design. So, when I think of organization design, I think of structure. I think of the little org charts with the family tree of your company, that kind of thing. So, my question to you is how does reskilling influence the way organizations are structured?
Yeah, you're not alone, Michael. So many folks think about org design in terms of that structure, the names and boxes. Where do we move people? What do we need to get done? And what does that look like? And while that is a big part of it, org design is really so much more. It is truly a complete system of performance that starts with culture and strategy and organizational capabilities. And once we have that established, it's got to be firm, it's got to be committed to, then we can start moving into that designing of the actual structure, which is really just a skeleton of roles. So, what are those roles? What do they look like? What will they be responsible for? And key for this conversation is what skills do they need in order to do these new roles that we're asking of them, in order to fit into this new structure we've defined and move toward that strategy and strategic goals? We have to know what those skills are. So, defining that early in the process is going to be absolutely key. And this structure will define where the work gets done, how the roles will interact with each other, and how information will flow. So, how we're going to do that is really important. Once we have those defined, we can take a look at our existing talent and start addressing how those roles will be filled. Do we have the skills? Do we need to bring in new talent, or will we develop the talent to fill those roles? If so, what does that look like? What are even the skills that we need to hire for?
Okay, so you're convincing me here that upskilling and reskilling, it's a piece of the big picture here. So from your perspective, how does skilling influence organization design, and really how are organizations ultimately structured?
Yeah, well, it's a game changer here. Putting these pieces together and seeing the whole picture before we start moving is how all the elements are going to fit together appropriately. So, traditional hierarchies are giving way to this more agile and networked structures. And that's because the skills of tomorrow often don't fit neatly into one department or one role. For example, a data analyst might also need project management or customer engagement skills. So cross functional teams really become essential in this new way of working. And reskilling employees for those broader roles help us break down the silos that often exist in organizations, making it difficult to get things done quickly and effectively. And it encourages innovation. So these agile cross functional teams have to be part of the organizational structure. Otherwise, they will be really bound by those existing models that don't always allow for the easy flow of information and quick decision making and the collaboration that is critical in the way we're moving. Another point I want to make here is that the Boston Consulting Group predicts that by 2030, 50% of the workforce could consist of freelancers, contractors, and gig workers, particularly in certain functions and types of organizations. So, this means that org design really has to account for integrating those non traditional workers into core teams. And companies with this more flexible and inclusive structure will be better positioned to really harness that full spectrum of talent available.
Okay, so let's talk numbers here. A lot of times it comes down to return on investment, or ROI for those uninitiated there. So, from what you've seen, is there any evidence that companies investing in upskilling and talent management see measurable benefits?
Absolutely. We often have to measure, say, talent management initiatives and programs indirectly, making that ROI really difficult to assess. But when it comes to these efforts, we have been able to see that organizations that prioritize upskilling and reskilling do see gains in things like productivity, employee retention, and innovation. Gallup found that disengaged employees cost companies billions of dollars every year, but reskilling and taking those existing employees and providing with the skills of tomorrow can reignite engagement by showing employees that they are valued and have a future in the company. And PwC reported that 72% of CEOs believe that upskilling programs have improved their company's innovation and agility, which are critical factors in allowing organizations to adapt to change quickly. And that is crucial. We call that change agility. How quickly do you bounce back as an organization? And some of those important competencies and skills support whether or not you as a whole can bounce back during tough times.
I really like what you're saying. From a layman's perspective, I think a lot of us battle that grass is greener type mentality. And I think what you're saying is that if you've set up a culture where upskilling and reskilling are really celebrated and people can see a hope for gain and an opportunity to tap into growth, they're going to be motivated. They're going to want to stay. They can see that this is a place where I want to invest my time too. So I really like what you're talking about in terms of ROI. I think anecdotally, from a worker perspective, that's valuable. That kind of ties into culture here. And I know this is something that you've done a lot of work on. Talk a little bit about the impact of everything we've talked about on culture of an organization, of course.
Culture is huge to me. I think it's important in your families, in your friend circles, as society as a whole, and it's no different in organizations. What does that culture look and feel like? And what are we supporting in our behaviors, in our language, in what's reinforced through succession planning and reward, and all of those things? We can't forget about the importance of culture. Workers today value culture, flexibility, and purpose more than ever. And there was a Glassdoor survey that said that 68% of employees prioritize company culture over salary. Now, I'm not suggesting that salary isn't important, but all else being equal, or even when salary maybe being a bit lower, company culture can really drive whether someone stays or leaves. And this can be incredibly impactful to the bottom line as recruiting costs are skyrocketing and strong talent is even harder to find. Cultures of continuous learning, development, and flexibility will really serve to help retain high potential talent in this tough market. So just wanted to put that out there. Culture is key.
The hard numbers, the ROI of embracing upskilling and reskilling. Thinking beyond that in terms of culture, what are some other positive benefits that we can really associate to embracing this mindset of upskilling and reskilling?
Yeah, Michael, you really nailed it. So, ROI isn't just about metrics, it's also about resilience. So, companies that effectively reskill their workforce can pivot faster in response to market disruptions, which are inevitable. So, whether it's a new technology, a new competitor, or even a global crisis in today's landscape, that ability to bounce back quickly is really invaluable.
Yeah, I can definitely see that if that's built in where you've established this culture that we are going to look at changing with the times to upskill and reskill. That from a cultural element is if your workforce believes that you can pivot because you're already doing it, that is going to really help, I think, give you a competitive advantage out there. So, one last question for you, though, is this for leaders that are listening today, what's the first step they should take to bridge the skills gap and design an effective organization?
Well, one, I would definitely start with reinforcing with leaders and getting their buy in for this concept of continuous learning. Talent management and org design aren't one and done projects, they're ongoing processes, and they require leadership commitment at every level. So, getting that buy in early is going to help lay the foundation for what's to come next. How are we going to develop and reinforce this culture of continuous learning so that whatever we do, upskilling, reskilling, the combination of the two, we already have the support in place. And I believe from a change management perspective, that is going to be crucial for whatever you design next.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I just think very specifically, the past 27 years, I've operated largely in the automotive industry, whether it's at the retail level, consulting, product engagement. And everything you're saying right now really hits home for my sector because the whole world of how we purchase things has unsurprisingly spilled over to the car business, right? In terms of the types of skills that are needed to thrive in the future of modern retailing are dramatically different than they were in 1998. So I can see how embracing this mindset of continuous learning is a massive thing, specifically if you want to equip your staff to survive and thrive there. If you had a final thought here, because I know you've been very gracious with your time, what would it be, Dr. Cheryl?
I encourage teams to look at upskilling and reskilling as an opportunity to grow and develop and really help support that engagement of employees. This really is a good thing. And as we start to share with employees, what does this mean for our organization? It's really important to encourage them through the WIFM, that classic, what's in it for me? Otherwise, it can just be extra work. And we want to remember that this is something that employees often crave. They want this. They want to have opportunity. So we can sometimes think we're just adding to them. How do we make this sound good? Well, it is good. It is a wonderful thing to develop and reskill your employees. So it can be challenging. Not everyone will want to join in on this journey, and that's okay. Those that do will become invaluable assets to your organization and help define success for generations to come.
Well said, Dr. Cheryl. Thank you once again for sharing your insight with our global audience. Please come back again very soon.
Thanks for having me.
The Performance Matters podcast is brought to you by GP Strategies. Together, we can create a world where business excellence makes possibilities achievable. You can subscribe to the show anywhere you get podcasts or listen on our website at gpstrategies.com.